Hey everybody, John here, and this is the Blue Water Outlook Weekly Weather Briefing for June 9th, 2024. I'm seeing signs now that we're transitioning from spring into summer. I'm going to try to point some of those out, but the main one is an expansion of summer-like weather across larger parts of the nation and more scattered precipitation and less severe weather. Let's get started in today's weather briefing. Well, first of all, these are our weather threats this week. I think our focus is going to be on three different things. One is going to be some extreme rainfall in Florida, especially the central and southern part of the state, 5 to 7 inches of rain. The other will be a continuation of the high heat and humidity over the southwest U.S., the plains, and Texas. And the third will be scattered heavy thunderstorms producing excessive rain here and there across the central U.S. Now we take a look at the hottest one-day maximum temperature last week, and it shows where the extreme heat was. Anything in the orange, this shade right here, this orange here, that was above 100 degrees. Anything in the red was above 110 degrees. So really hot temperatures last week. And the 90 degrees are expanding as well. That's in yellow, and you can see how the 90 degrees is expanding. Now we take a look at the severe storms last week, and yes, we did have some hail in purple, especially Kansas and Nebraska, parts of the Dakotas as well, and then windstorms further off to the east. The bottom right indicates the tornadoes. Now we did have severe weather last week. It was pretty active, but it wasn't nearly as widespread as we saw in May. I thought this was interesting this morning. These clouds here, that's almost looks like a top of a hurricane. These streaks coming out here, that's somewhat unusual. So I looked at a model here, and this shows diffluence aloft, how the winds are coming out of that top of that. So we're showing an area right in here where we're sort of pulling from the atmospheric column air upward, and right below it is where we have our flood watches, and that indicates the area of greatest upward motion. And at the top of that, just somewhat similar to a hurricane, the air is then flowing out from the top, causing the lift, causing the heavy rain, causing the potential for flooding. So here was our heavy rain last week. We had heavy rain in the Pacific Northwest, especially along the coast and higher elevations. And then right through the central part of the nation, we also had areas of very heavy rain, over 2 or 3 inches of rain. The average temperatures last week, well, it was brutally hot in the west and the far south. And this is a pattern that models have been indicating that could occur and right in this area, and then also in the northeast U.S. And I think this is another sign of summer, is we're beginning to lock in these patterns that could go for a while, maybe even summer long. So we're seeing these clues quite possibly of what we're going to see now that we're getting into the core of summer. But these are temperatures here that are 10 degrees or more above normal for a weekly average. In case you're interested in flooding, well, another sign of summer is that the flooding is gradually coming down, the spring flooding. We have areas of flooding that are associated with where we had the heaviest rain last week, but that flooding is more localized. Okay, so what do we have here? We have the jet stream right now, an amplified flow with a ridge of high pressure in the west with the hot weather and some pleasant weather in the east with a dip in the jet stream. Now, as we go towards the end of the week, what do we see? Well, we see a change here. The ridge of high pressure expands eastward, and then the dip in the jet stream begins to become a bit more contracted and pushes off to the east. So that means the hotter weather is going to expand and the pleasant weather is going to shrink. And you can see that here. Next 5 days, some nice cooler weather in the Midwest, Ohio River Valley, Great Lakes. There's the heat, but as we go forward, we see that hot weather generally returns to most of the eastern U.S. Now, as we get into mid to late June, I find something interesting here. I sort of outlined it in that black. Well, that is what models have been hinting at, and not just models, but a climate signal, long-term trends, that while most of the U.S. is warming, getting hotter summers, that area in the upper Midwest has actually been sort of bucking that trend and been closer to normal, and that might be what we're seeing here as we get later into June. Okay, now that's temperature. Let's talk about rain. And the focus, where do you see that? That Florida Peninsula, and that looks like where the hot spot's going to be. There are going to be pockets of heavy rain. Any of these little pockets right here could produce some excessive rain. But Florida is going to be really where the heavy rain will be. And what we have here is we have a low developing in the Gulf of Mexico. Right now, the Hurricane Center's not calling that tropical. It's just sort of an area of low pressure. And we're pulling up that moisture from the Gulf inland, and that's anything in green there is a very high precipitable water, and that is very deep-seated moisture. Now, look at the Gulf of Mexico. Mid-80s already, early in June. So what we're seeing is lots of warm moisture, lots of moisture easily transported inland. We might see that throughout the summer months, where maybe later this year or summer it's other parts of the Gulf with that warm weather. Whether it's a tropical system or not, it gives us the potential for heavy rain. Okay, let's go on to the extended outlook. Here's week 2. Hot weather over large parts of the nation, and the Pacific Northwest actually cools down a bit with an upper low. And I wanted to show you weeks 3 and 4. This is a little bit different than that earlier model I showed you, but basically I think the takeaway on here is that we are headed into summer. If you've had a pleasant summer, the first part, it could be getting quite much more like summer heat as we get into the middle and latter part of June. Now, NMME, long-range model, just came in. I'll put a post on that, an analysis this week. But this is the area, this lighter shade of brown, is where we could have some pretty extreme heat. This is for July. Pacific or Northeast U.S., and then parts of the Western U.S. could be very hot, unusually hot, as we get into July. I'm also a bit concerned with all this area of brown here. That's indicating very dry conditions. So we could be talking about the Rockies into the parts of the plains as getting unusually hot and dry as we get into the core of summer. That's this week's weather briefing. I hope it helps you in your planning. I hope you have a great week, and I'll be talking with you again next weekend. Take care.